old pal Kip, Grandpappy Kip. I'm not a grandfather, but anyway, I look like one. Anyway, this video is hopefully going to help somebody who is doing an engine swap on a Promaster. I'm trying to make a video where I put all my tips and tricks in one place, and this is as good as any. In theory, what I should be doing is filming a video start to finish, but that involves way more work, and plus, you know, it's just a thing. So anyway, here we have a van. They're all the same, as you know. And we're going to take this engine out and put another engine in. Okay, so the basic gist of this thing is that with the van up on your regular jack stands, that's all you need to do. That's all the clearance you're going to need. You're going to need clearance for the cherry picker in front of it, but that ain't rocket science, as the colloquial locals say. The bright idea here is that you're going to remove all the front and then swing the engine and it just walks out. You're going to put a floor jack under the transmission to just hold it in place, and the transmission holds the engine on this side, the upper engine mount holds it on that side. The basic things to know about this engine swap are that when you get to this part with the exhaust, you can see these crusty bolts or whatever. What you'll do is you'll just spin them from the back and they'll break, and it's not threaded inside there. So if you can use a death wheel here and break that one off, you can use a grinder or whatever and then just pound the pin that's left, the bolt shank, out. That will separate the cat there, and the same story in the back. However, the main trick of this is that the front cat obviously can come out with the engine, or it can be unbolted from the engine, however you want to do it. But the rear cat is trapped by the passenger side axle, which runs this way. There's a carrier bearing that bolts the axle to the back of the engine. And if you can't get the rear cat off because the bolts are rusty, what you can do is remove the passenger side axle, and then the engine will walk out with both cats on it, no problem. The way to remove the axle, it's a little bit involved. I believe that's a 46. I could be wrong about that, but you have to take the hub apart and then separate the axle and then bring it out. But once it's out, then the engine can come out no problem. One of the nice things about doing this engine swap is you do not need to crack the AC system open. You can see I have the condenser just hanging down there, but when the compressor comes off the block, it will swing out of the way and you'll wire it up into this section, and it will give you even more clearance so that the condenser will live out here a little bit. Same with this power steering cooler. That's what that thing is. Now over here on this side, you see I have the radiator. Is the only thing that's holding it is the transmission cooler lines. You can separate the radiator from the trans cooler there. It's kind of tricky how it works, but when you see it, you do it. Or you can, with one Allen screw, if it's in good condition, you can unbolt both lines and move it out of your way. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to leave the trans cooler on because when I go to, I may want to be able to start the engine before I put everything back together, just to make sure it works and it runs code-free. And if that line is off, then it will piss transmission fluid everywhere, as you would imagine. But either way, you could leave the radiator here like this, and because it's only on the rubber cooler lines, I could wind it around all the way there, out of my way. What else is to know? So the way you swing this engine on your cherry pickers, you put one end of your chain through there with a bolt, and there's a bolt boss on the back side of the cylinder head. It may be for this, which is called the triangle bracket. You get the other end of your chain there, and then you pick the engine up here. As you can see, what makes this job more possible is removing the oval air intake, which I have in another video, and just undressing the front. 4 bolts hold the bumper, or 8 bolts hold the bumper. I'm sorry, 6 bolts and 2 nuts hold the front bumper piece, the cross member, which is now right here. There, you can see the flange for that. So that unbolts. You don't have to take this passenger side plastic wing off, but it's really easy. 3 at the top, you'll have already done the bottoms, and then there's one here somewhere. This one or this one, I forget, that hold it on. I've taken the headlight bucket out just because I wanted access to take the air filter housing out, but you don't have to do that. This engine was already half undressed. You don't have to undress any of this top stuff. You can if you want to, but, well, I suppose you'd have to take the upper intake off to get the wiring off. The wiring will just kind of push out of the way, and basically the guts of the electrical for this entire thing are on this big plug, this gray slide plug. That's pretty much all the wiring. There's a few other things, obviously. We will be taking You don't have to take the alternator out, although all this stuff, the alternator and the AC compressor live on a bracket that bolts to the side of the engine. It's an adapter because the engine is the same for all the Promasters, but the belt and accessory arrangement is different. So that stuff's going to transfer over to the new engine. All the things that transfer over to the new engine are the bracket for these two, this upper pad for the upper engine mount. This piece is different, very slightly different on the other front-wheel drive Chryslers. One of these bolt holes either doesn't line up or has a different thread pitch, I forget, but you can transfer this one over. What else comes over? Depends on how you get your engine, I suppose. None of this is rocket science. The belt drive for a other front-wheel drive Chrysler, like a Journey or a Town & Country, is basically the same, although on this one, he's got all new stuff here. I'm going to transfer that over to the new engine. What else? Transmission stays in. You'll just use a floor jack underneath it just to support it, because it would fall. It's supported by the... I guess it wouldn't fall out, but it would... you're going to want to... When you go to line this stuff back up, you're going to want a jack under the pan. You might want to use a board there, too, to soften it a little bit. But you don't really need a jack under the engine. It kind of helps because it keeps the engine level, and that takes care of one of the three axes. It is a kind of a pickle to get the engine back in on the guide pins for the transmission, but enough finagling, and you got enough room. And you can see with it just up on the jack stands, you got more than enough room underneath to do anything that you're going to need to do. The power steering pump comes off in the back corner, but it just lives there. And a few electrical connectors, the oil pressure sensor connector, and over on this side is the crank position sensor. Just plugs. Not very complicated. As you can see, the grille in both halves. There's the wing, the bumper piece. This one has a brush guard that'll go on last. There's the headlight, and this is some of the internal engine stuff. But that's about it. The only thing that may give you problems is this. The dipstick on a Promaster, the dipstick tube and the dipstick are proprietary to the Promaster because the cowl in the Promaster is higher and the dipstick needs to be, it's like a couple inches longer, just so you can get to it. To get this out, in theory, you could use your old dipstick on the new engine, but you'll find that that is almost, not always, but very difficult to get out. I just always buy a new one. And if you have trouble getting it out of the new engine, take the pan off and you can pound it out from the inside. It's an extra step, but it can be done. But except for the dipstick, you could leave the oil in the engine if you want when you swap it. What else is there to know? Cooling lines. Once the engine is out, you'll assess the condition of this metal cooling line and the one that goes around the back. These are in good shape, but these tend to rust over time, as does sometimes this. That's an upgrade part or a replacement part if you have trouble. What else is there to know? The radiator sits in here on these rubber cushions, and you'll lose one. It's here somewhere. However, I have learned from personal experience that you can substitute one of these, one of the air filter holders, if you need to. What else is there to know? Fuel. This is the fuel line. That'll just go out of the way. That's about it. You walk the old one out, you prep the new one, you walk it in, you bolt her up, Bob's your uncle. Surprisingly, the time in this is about 2/3 extraction and 1/3 insertion. These vehicles are designed to be easy to assemble because that's a profitability thing. So they take longer to get apart, but boy, when it goes back together quick. It's kind of has a Lego feel to it. What else? I'm going to leave this on as the engine walks out, most likely, because I don't want to disturb. These are still factory here. You can tell by the band clamps. And there you go. All right, well, I'm on it, kids.